Good evening, everyone present here. It is a well known proverb that actions speak louder than words. With a person like her, the proverb seems to do justice. I'm delighted to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Alice Durgrayan, who is here to share her knowledge on the problem of teachers' meta language. She is an ESL, EFL, ESP teacher trainer, global educator, and international speaker, PhD at Armenian State Pedagogical University. She took her MAs in the fields of psychology and foreign languages. She is an ESL teacher at Razan Basic School in Levin after William Saroyan and an ESL trainer at skiing lecturer at ELTA University in Czech Republic. She has also took part in many different international conferences as a speaker in different international projects as an EFL trainer. She has also authored many scientific articles in the field of teaching English as a second language. Currently, she is a volunteer in different international projects and companies such as HETT, Edu Armenia, ELTA University, etc. Currently, she is specialized and working on the problems of teacher training on the virtual platform. We are very grateful to have you here as our chief guest today, ma'am. We are looking forward for your speech. Hearty welcome. The session is over to you, ma'am.
Good evening one more time. Thank you, first of all, you for the invitation. And it's really very honored. I'm honored to be here and to share my views and all the knowledge, maybe skills, and maybe some kinds of informative information for you. Sorry today for my voice. I have been waiting for this part the last days. I'm a little bit had problems with the voice and with health. That's why, but I'm here and I'm going to share it. Now I will try just to share my screen and just to be assured that really just tell me, do you see my screen or not? Is my screen visible for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I will make it. Okay, today we are going to talk about the problem of teachers' meta language. What is it, first of all? And maybe what peculiarities usually we have and what do we need? Is it a necessary thing, useful thing? Is it necessary to have your meta language while teaching or not? Today we are going to speak about this problem and also we are going to have maybe in some cases, maybe discussions. That's why I would like you to be more active. And even if you have some kinds of questions or something to share on this topic, you will be just welcome. And today also, I'm going not only to speak about the meta language and try to give its necessity, and also maybe at the end of the session, I'm going to share with you also about the disadvantages of meta language because as everything it has a white and black side here also. Maybe in many cases, in 80-90%, it's useful just to know teachers' meta language because it makes easier not only, for example, to learn the foreign language, but also it makes easier as a process of teaching for teachers too. Because you know you can even use your native language in order to make to make easier for your students the teaching process and to have good results at the end of the session or at the end of the term with your students. First of all, before going and discussing all other problems concerning to meta language, let's first of all try to know what is meta language. When we say meta language, in some cases it is concerning to the maybe mental field of the brain work or a teaching process, learning process, everything is included in it. The first one that the first one that I would like to just share with you, it's about that meta language is a language teachers and learners who want to talk, first of all, English language. In this case, I'm focused on English language as a second language, as a foreign language that we are going to represent our students. And the next point, it goes to, it can be just used in any foreign language teaching process. And also, as I have told, it's a talk, it's going to be the learning and also teaching, because all these three components are connected to each other. And from this point, they try to be just connected and just like a one whole complex as they are used to teach the students. And also, they are going to be like, it can be in linguistics, it's like kinds of a language used to make statements about other language statements. For example, I can just make a statement or I can ask a question to my students, giving also the translation in their native language, trying just to compare and trying also at the same time to make clearer, more clearer for the students. And in this case, they can be just it can be just easy for them to understand the language or maybe the instruction or the question I have given the student. And also, at the same time, it's going to be like in another field. It's going to be like something that you can just use in order to get for your students uh, different kinds of, you can share your skills, knowledge, experience in this case. Let's try. I have just here share some kinds of statements and points that can refer to meta language. It can be like, let's start from the part of this course of language teaching and learning. As I have talked, it's a structure that involving these three main components, it gives an opportunity to the teacher and also to the students at the same time to learn and to teach the language, to take something and more in a more communicative way. For example, including not only the grammar point, for example, the spelling, the pronunciation, but the most important component also the communicative, and especially when we want to develop the speaking skills. It can be in every kind of course book, every kind of textbook, any kind of material book, or it can be, if it's online, you can find like a mass of information of it in different kinds of social educational just websites and get it, because it's something, it can be like a text, it can be grammar, it can be an activity, it can be an icebreaker or a game or such kind of anything that refers to the language learning process. And also, it all just helps them to understand their language. How can they understand their language, and how can they just divide, maybe how they can just transfer from one stage, from one level into another one, and what can, for example, they can learn, and basing on the skills and knowledge that they have in this field, they can transfer to, and they can pass just to another sphere, to another stage, and making deeper their knowledge and skills, and also at the same time experiencing and having more and more practical activities in this case. And after it, it goes to another one, because it makes for them to be more clear in their presentation. Even, for example, if the teacher gives a task to the students and asks them just to do this task, in this case also, the teacher tries to give the instruction, then just the understanding how the students have understood the instruction, how they are going to, for example, to solve the task or to do the task, what is going, what kind of result is going to be, and also about the assessment, about the feedback. Everything in this case, while using the meta language, shows the meta language of a teacher. It should be just easier to understand what can be done. On the second part of my session, I am going to share another presentation where I'm going to give you some kind of points about the teacher language. What kind of teacher language can be just developed for the teacher, especially when you are a beginner. And also, it is expected that students should use this one. For example, let's take that our topic is present simple tense, and I'm going to explain my students that students, you are going Let's start from maybe the icebreaker, giving them about their routine or some kind of hobbies or some kind of habits that they usually have or do, or it's going to be referred to the present simple tense. And according to the language, according to the vocabulary, and also some kinds of maybe explanation, objectives, and also ways and methods, everything is just realized and is just understood by the student as it is. And on the next stage, when it is after the theoretical, let's say, part, we pass to the practical. It can be freer practice, it can be controlled practice. We just pull to going to this practical part. In this stage, we should see. We should be like within the ones that witness the ones that our students are using the same method, the same way doing their task as we have explained them before. And this is the one that is the meta language to be used. Because in this case, we just see that everything the meta language just is taught, is learned by our students, and then now they are just going, they are just using this type of or this method or this way of explaining or doing according to the meta language of our students. And also, it makes it easier for students how to use it. For example, if I have a topic teaching them new words for fruit, it can be, or new words. In this case, for example, I can use the words teaching them animals, how I teach, even the way, even the game, even the icebreaker, everything is just learned by our students, and the next moment they are going to use it. And even if you will have a chance of generation, you will see. I remember the, now I have a colleague whose teacher is also working at the same school, and like teacher and her previous students, they are working, and both of them they are the teacher of mathematics. And what is interesting, uh, her student now this teacher is about 60 years old, and her student who is just have graduated has graduated this university. It's the first year she's working at our school. She is using the same methods and ways when she was a student. The same meta language, the same explaining rules, everything is teaching in mathematics and so. And what is interesting when they are comparing, the student always says that I have like copied down everything from my teacher because at that time I have been taught mathematics through this way or through this method, and this meta language was very useful for me. And now I'm going to share the same using the same method and ways to teach my students too. As you see, it goes to the more easier for the student and also at the same time for the teacher just to share. Meta language, let's look here at the characteristics. It can define a language using a different language. As I have told, even when you, especially when your students are beginners or maybe elementary students, there are many things that they don't know, that can't remember in some cases in a foreign language, for example, in English language. In this case, we try to translate, we try to, through the flashcards or through the other alternative materials, try to help our students to remember and memorize these things. And in this case, I use just my native language to explain that. It can be richer than other object language because it describes everything. For example, if in my language, in native language, I would try to explain some kind of rule of English language teaching process, it will be just not so much available and not so much appropriate one. But when I try to maybe through the mapping, through the using other methods and ways to explain it in English language, using the structure and the syntax and all the components that I need to explain the grammar rule, it will be more useful for my students. And also, it goes to the logical just level. When you just try to understand when you try to memorize, and after going into a upper level from in your logical memory and trying to thinking, and in some cases answering, giving some kind of feedback, assessing some kind of point of the knowledge skills you have just got in there on the level of logical, just memorizing or memory, or in some cases even metacognition level. And also it can be just copied because it can be expressed by a meta language. For example, when I give any kind of instruction or explain something, this is like a complex or special elements and sentences or statements that I use in order to explain my students. And from this point, it goes to like a B to be a set of words, the vocabulary or the meta language that I am using in order to explain. And this meta language is learned by my students as something, a stable one, a simple one, and also at the same time the main language instruction of the main language vocabulary and phrases that can be used by my students in the future. And what is interesting, in meta language, while using your meta language, we try, first of all, in the 21st century, when we are having planning our lessons, we try to pass from the teacher TTT code to student talking. It goes to the more to having more student-centered lessons. And from this time, for example, it may be not a long ago when there was teacher-centered teaching. In this case, teacher talking time was more preferable. For example, in some cases, than the student talking time. But nowadays, we try to minimize teacher talking time in order to activate student talking time. Because when we have, even when we explain, even when we give new tests, even when we just give any kind of new rule or something, we try to use the critical thinking, metacognition of our students, their activeness, in order just to make our lessons more communicative one, more collaborative one, because in this case, even the way that I'm going to explain my students, I will just try to find a way to make them speak. For example, I can just explain them and grammar rules, just try through the examples, through the giving forms, through the way that they are going to guess in order to know the rule. They are going to guess what is the forms going according to the example that can be shared on the screen or will be given to the students. And what am I doing? In this case, I try to minimize DTT and try to activate STT from this point. And what is the result? The result is going to be the one that really I'm going to, what to do? I'm going to communicate, to make deeper communicative process of my students, between teacher and students, between students and students. And from this point, it's very important one. Now, it's in some cases we just say that meta language can be like, from the terminology point, it can be like a thing. From the process point, it can be like a talk about language. Because I can give, for example, I can say, I'm going to use my meta language in this field, but at the same time, I should just realize, I should just understand that it's a process. It's a process of talking about the language. In which case, we try just to focus on using meta language to practice them, to participate in grade level tests and make effective just choices. In this case, for example, while learning and teaching them meta language, my students at the end of, for example, the lesson or at the end of the term, they will be able to memorize all the statements or all the main instructions that usually I have for my students to ask, to give instruction, to do the test, to Why not to compare, to discuss, to debate and assess, or many other ways for them, just to check how is their meta language just development level for them. Is everything understandable for my students when I ask them something to do, when I ask them, for example, to do the task? How can they assess? How can they give feedback? So what kind of discussion can be between teachers and students in order to understand the language, the meta language of the teacher? In many cases, we can just say that meta language has different types of types. We say just meta language, but in some cases we should pay attention to the one that meta language is something that we can use during our lessons. In some cases we use meta language, but at the same time we should pay attention to the fact that it can be just used, and in some cases it can be just be enrolled in different kinds of the sciences. It can be enrolled in different kinds of courses, and from this point, we have different types of just meta language. The first one is embedded meta language, which usually is a formal language which is used by the teacher, for example, to give the clear instructions, to explain something, or etc. It's like the nature of the formalization of the numbers theory that meta language is embedded inside of her. It gives like how the creative achievement of the logical processes can be just described. From this point, it can be just said that it can occur in formal or informal or formal, just as in English, where the descriptors can be, for example, adjectives, adverbs, possessive pronouns, and they can be just invoked in the meta language. And in some cases, for example, nouns, verbs, or adverbs, or other ones can be just translated or used in a target language. And for example, if I can explain them, for example, that red, this is a color, I can, in a native language, it can be related to something very important or a symbol of the country or something. I can try to just involve them in the making relationship between them, and through it my student is able to memorize this word easier. The second one is just the ordered one, ordered meta language. It goes to like an analogy to ordered language. For example, it can be just the construction of a meta language to speak an object language, followed by the creation of another metacognition to discuss the first one. In these cases, we can say that we try to just follow the order of the statements, or follow all the stages, or pass through all the stages in order to get the result we want to have. We can start, for example, for ordered meta language, we can start from the words and phrases and sentences, maybe the complex object sentences, etc., etc. And the third one, it goes to a native meta language, which is very similar to the ordered meta language, but likes a little bit goes to the field of abstraction, because it can be like, in some cases, is a language used to discuss, like gender is also used to examine, for example, the spaces. This is my topic. I want to learn them about spaces, and I can just take different levels of the same topic and try to give, because it looks like a net which has different kinds of points, and I try to just give them, I try to explain from different points, making relationship with all the components and the main topic that we usually have. Now, what can students do, for example, in order to understand the meta language level of the teacher? We can have a questionnaire, or we can have an anket, or we can have even a tablet like as here I have brought for you. On the screen you can see that I have just here 4 questions, which my students are going to just answer and make some kind of note while being present at the lesson. The first question, what does the teacher say? For example, the teacher said, look at the map. What is the communicative purpose? In this case, when the teacher says, look at the map, it's like giving instruction, checking, or can be checking comprehension, or just trying with the look at the, and all we can just look at the map trying. And this going to be written by the student. The next question that is here is, what is the immediate context? For example, the construction where the teacher says, look at the map, it means that giving some kind of instruction for a task to the map, for example, in this example that I have brought here. And also how might be said to a native speaker. For example, can you see where the bank is? For example, I can say, as you see, we are starting from the elementary grade, maybe from the beginner stage, and going through the stages, we come to the one when we can be just proficient in everything and giving them like clear instruction, just trying to come nearer and nearer to a native speaker. There is a big difference. For example, when she says, look at the map, and at the end, as you see, the native speaker just can say, can you see where the bank is? There is a difference between that. And now, before going to other page, I would like to ask, have you ever paid attention to the meta language while teaching at school or not? If there are any of the participants you can share.
Yes, we did, and we do it almost all the time, and it's a very important topic.
And do you compare your results, for example, or not?
Sure, we do. We also compare, as in my case, I'm teaching several languages, and still we have the same problem that the new generation, upcoming one, they just come with a poor language of understanding, and we use this meta language in order to make the description, or using kind of algorithms to just put the information in quite good order. So this we call this number of skills as inter-language or inter-language meta skills. That's kind of thing that students should have abilities to learn different subjects, or it's like a meta language in teaching different subjects, something like that. That's important. And sometimes, particularly related to my geography, we have mostly oriented Russian, one language, but sometimes English books, they are quite helpful and up to date in order to understand huge and just different topics in English quite easier and much easier than in Russian language in this case. So that's quite helpful. Yeah. Okay. And English is also a global language, and you have a good variety and selection of methodology and topics, and compare, and you can also take into account world Englishes and some researches done in that countries too. And the topic is quite important. And I was also heard about this phenomena from scholars just teaching Chinese language and teaching language as English in Thailand. We have 2 professors, and if you are interested, I can send some information related to the research. Have some presentations, and also I'm full of readings with Alan Changi, a professor from European Union, who does research in just the language, meta language, and they have a lot of comparison gestures and body language and everything. They just try to understand the gestures and the mechanisms of the language and cognitive perception. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the answer. Do we have any other speaker, any other teachers who would like to share? Okay, let's move. If we don't have anyone to, yes, really, it's very good, important one. As for me, for example, I use different kinds of ways while teaching, for example, through my native language, for example, Armenian to English language as a second and foreign language, and also at the same time while teaching English as a second and foreign language through Russian language. In both cases, I use different languages, for example, different kinds of meta language instructions and also methods and ways in order to teach my students. They can be Armenians, they can be foreigners, and I use completely different kinds of language when I'm teaching English as a foreign or ESL as to foreigners. For example, I have students from Philippines, I have students from Korea, whose native language I don't know really. And in this case, it's really a different thing because I have another instructions. In this case, I have a completely different meta language for teaching them because, for example, when I teach through Armenian or through Russian to the students English language, in some cases maybe there I have a chance to translate or to give some kind of instructions in their native language. But what refers when you work with a foreign language, when you are teaching English language and you don't know their native language, it goes to the completely different sphere, and it's really very difficult for you to teach that. From this point, it's really very difficult part. Okay, let's go. As I have told you before going as I have about the white and black sides here also, we have advantages and we have also at the same time disadvantages of the using meta language. Let's a little bit try to see also the negative for just side of meta language too, because we just say that meta language is this one, but as and everything, it has also its minuses too. The first one is that many scholars just find that it's unnecessary and can confuse students because the students try to base on the translation and not paying attention to the real meaning of the word. It can be creates just a closed discourse community. For example, you can be like with limitations. You know this is one and nothing out of the borders of this structure. In this case, you know these instructions is a framework of this lesson or is a framework of this topic, and you don't pay attention to the other things out of it. And also, when you say talking about the language, it is not the same as using a language because you can talk, you can know some words, but when you are going to use the language, it's another field. In many cases, you can just have difficulties not only with the usage of the language, but at the same time you can have difficulties with the usage of grammar, with the usage of even with the choice of vocabulary, necessary vocabulary with a word. You can have a really problem with it. And also, in some cases, it is concentrated and focused on the written form, on the grammar form. You know everything, you know the vocabulary, you know the grammar, but you can't use it. In some cases, it is said that communicative field and communicative level, in this case, is a little bit just limited one because I can know the grammar and I can know from this point everything concerning to the grammar, but I can't use it. I know that present simple one just process. I have so many words. I know so many words about the daily routine, but I can't make up a sentence. Or even if I can make up sentences in some case, it can be in written form and what refers to the communicative. Just speaking field, I can have some kinds of like failures from this point. And also, it can be just confused in some cases than helpful. Maybe I can achieve when I want use my target language in order to just give them to teach my students learning to teach them English language. But when I using my target, my native language, in some cases it will be just a little bit difficult for them because they are confused and they try to understand in which way they can just remember. But when they don't translate, for example, in this case, they know that this is the one they have just to remember everything. And as I have told, I'm going to share with you another just one more other one about the teaching classroom. Just be assured, do you see my screen or not? Do you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. On the second part, while talking about the meta language and what can be just used, what kind of language can be used while you are teaching, I want also to share with you about the uh, English teaching English, classroom English. What is it? In some cases, we can say that it can be everyday English. In some cases, it can be instructions. In some cases, it can be just task and everything. But in other cases, we can just use different kinds of games, activities, tests in order to teach them. Here, I start here with the icebreaker. It's a game for the kids which we can just use. For example, it's the first time you enter the classroom and your students don't know any other words from the language. What can you do? You can just start from the icebreakers or using any kind of game in order to get acquainted with your students. Step by step, try to teach them the classroom English about the instruction, about how to do the test, even the atmosphere, even the field, even the material that you are going to share. And as you see, it has many pluses because it makes you make your students start thinking in English, start remembering, start understanding and memorizing the words, statements, phrases, sentences that can be really useful for them automatically just to remember and use these sentences. And also it can be just focused on learning the language and also especially about developing the so the speaking skills for the students. This one is refers to the classroom English. And in many cases, we have different kinds of opinions. Should I use classroom English? Should I use this English, or I have to be experienced in a special, automatically special, just structure of English, which I have only used this structure, for example, not to pay attention to other one. Because when we have a language and when we especially we speak in English and have our own meta language, in this case we can just speak our English language, um, try to teach them and try to memorize, try to practice everything in foreign language, in this case in English language. um, it will be it will make my students be more confident and be sure that they are going to use this language in future. But when not, it's going just to have really a negative habit of translating everything. Just imagine I will say, for example, I will try to use Russian language. In this case, I will say, please open your books. Откройте ваши книги. It was in Russian, sorry. Onward, I was trying, and every time when I will tell the statement, the instruction, and every time I'm translating into the Russian language, my students will get used to it. That in many cases they won't even listen to my instruction in English because they are sure that after English version, I'm going to translate for them the Russian version, and it's okay for them. And also, in some cases, uh, just giving the instruction, it will make my students not to try to memorize and remember the instruction given in English language. That's why try to have the balance between the native language and also the foreign, in this case, English language, while teaching them. And what it gives us. First of all, when we teach classroom English, in this case, the teacher gives in at the beginning, all the instruction can be given in their first language, but step by step you can just change. For example, the first day when I am entering the classroom and I want to say, students, open your books, and I know that my students are not used to hearing English language, to listen because it's a new language for them. I'm going to use non-verbal communication for it. I can just say, students, please open your books or close your books. Please stand up. Please sit down. I will try to use my just gestures and at the same time the non-verbal communication forms in order to get acquainted with my students, to give them the first one. And every time when I'm just saying, please open your books, they will know that if I have, for example, a book with me, I'm trying to say, students, please open your books. I'm just telling the instruction, showing them, and at the same time, I'm trying to make clear for them that this instruction, which is in English, they will say. Or from my practice, many times, for example, the student during the lessons, I can say, may I go out to drink water? This is a context like a stative sentence for them that they memorize very well, and every time or go out, I will try to say or just goodbye or something. Such kind of sentences just make easier for them to understand the classroom teacher's language, meta language very well. And from the first day, step by step, you will go and reach the top of your teaching process, and you will see that at the end, you don't need to say every time, please open, when I will say without any kind of non-verbal communication, please open the book, and I will open. And here are some kind of ones, as I was talking about, how are you, or good morning, some kind of instructions, waiting to start. Even in some cases, you can use different kinds of just verbal ones. Different kinds of flashcards which can be used. I will show you some of them that in some cases I use for my students. For example, I can choose or show them this one. Or when we are having the test, I can ask them, for example, questions. I just show the flashcard they know. Or I have such kind of one when I say listen, they show look at this just flashcard and know that they have to listen. Or I can just say they don't behave good with themselves. I can say stay organize yourself or stay on task or participate in class if I have someone who is very shy and doesn't like to take part in any kind of this is I can just I'm giving you this card and showing, and it means that they are going to understand immediately what I mean. They are going to. What can we do? How can we use such kind of meta language instructions or statements to be to start using in our school? Starting using it during our lessons, and everything we should start from the ones that we are going to use them frequently. For example, when I say good morning, for example, when I am having my lessons with younger students, younger learners, after greeting them, I always ask, how are you? Just please show me, are you good? Are you bad? Or so-so? And according to they are good, bad, or so-so, they just show me how they are feeling. It's the first like interaction between the teacher and student, and I, as you see, start from the basic one, and step by step, I will make it more and more complicated for my students. And from at the end, I will get something that I'm going from the beginning, I'm just going up to the hill, to the top that I need to get at the end of the time. And how can I do it? Like, I can teach them as I just teach them the new words. For example, the stand up, the sit down, how are you, good, bad, for example. In some cases, even up, for example, low, big, small, right hand, left hand. As you see, there are many things that you can just show your students. They are very basic one, and according to this language, it's very easy for it makes easier the student, the teacher. Their meta language makes easier to understand and step by step involving new and new skills in it. And at the end, your just structure with this ball will become bigger and bigger at the end of the session, at the end of the term test. And as you see, we can start with the very basic ones and head movement about something that I have told you, and also demonstration, which is very important one. When you demonstrate, even especially when you deal with young learners, in many cases, your maybe 80-90% of your speech should be just connected or can be just done through these non-verbal communication ways, because they are younger, because they don't have so many just let's say big vocabulary that can be used by them. They are not experienced ones. That's why you should just use this one. And how can we just check this understanding? It can be give them some kind of instruction and say, please stand up. Next time, without showing stand up, I will say stand up. And when they say, I will be just able to check them. In some cases, when we have text, for example, at school in our textbooks, and after the task-based reading we have, the test can be true or false. In some cases, I ask my students, if the statement is true, please raise your right hand. If the statement is wrong, please just raise your left hand. And according to this one, while I am reading the statements according to the text, they are just raising their hands, and I can check this one also. Is it available for them? Is it appropriate for them or not? Or in some cases, if the learner doesn't understand the instruction, I can try to explain them one more time. Or if there are many students who don't understand something, they just look. If everyone is just right, it's the wrong. It's the right one. It's true. With the left hand, it's the wrong one. I try to just interpret that, and also that they can tell others what they can do in some cases, even in their own language. It's also, for example, today we have learned this one, and we have done this, and everything they are telling in their own language, like means that they have understood something. And also from the faces, you can see different kind of looks. It's which kind of smiling and raising his hand. It means everything is okay. If just feel confusing looking, what are you, teacher? What do you want from me? It means that there is some kind of confusion for them. They haven't understood the rules, and you can just ask them and try to, while asking or while repeating or while asking someone to show, you can just help your student know and understand the new rules. I think in any case, having knowing the meta language, it will be just constructed. It can be just planned by the teacher very, very carefully. And due to the level, due to the material, due to even the time management, even the classroom management. You can plan all your lessons according to the needs and requirements that you have, and also according to them all the necessary information that you want to teach your students, and many other things. You can just base on it and know more about this meta language. You can just construct, you can just conduct your lesson planning on a level that is appropriate for your students. And step by step, just complicating it, it will give you an opportunity to have really a good, just in some cases, real good one and beneficial result for not only for your student but also for you too. Because in this case, you will know what language, what meta language to use in order to achieve. In any case, just be always just very optimist and working and try to struggle and to get more and more experience in that field. And year by year, you will see the result. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your splendid lecture. Your ideas and thoughts are so admirable and delightful. We thoroughly enjoyed this session. Your presentation is too useful for us. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
And this is time for a question and answer session. So those who have doubts or questions, you can ask.
Dear scholar, thank you. Dear Alessia, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. I was really enjoyed to hear my colleague from other side. I also have some students from Armenia, and I'm teaching English them, and also based on their own native language. It quite helps because Armenian language has some peculiarities with Indo-European languages, and the phonetics will help them to reveal the native language will help them to reveal basics of English pronunciation and RPs. And it was quite helpful. And I have some books on meta language and teaching. I would like to share with you and colleagues. They're quite helpful. And if you have some ideas, you can share also. And I want to have your email. Please type it in your chat, and I will send some books related to your topic. And thank you very much again. And I wish you health and good research and all the best in your studies and academic work. Thank you.